If you want to take control of your life and stop letting your job define your future, this audiobook will show you exactly how to do it. In the next few minutes, you'll discover practical ways to prioritize personal growth every single day, build habits that stick, and protect your time so you can become the best version of yourself. From creating daily routines that focus on learning, to saying no to distractions, to using your weekends for meaningful skill building, every step you take will compound into real progress. You'll learn how to make consistent, intentional choices that lead to discipline, confidence, and long-term success. Stick with this video, follow the actionable steps, and you'll start seeing results in how you manage your time, energy, and priorities. Subscribe to Audiobook Everyday for more content that guides you to improve, grow, and succeed every day. Number 1. Choose daily habits over workload. The way a person builds their life is shaped less by the big moments and more by the small choices they repeat every day. Choosing daily habits over workload is one of the most important decisions someone can make when they want real and lasting personal growth. Many people wake up and jump straight into the demands of their job. They rush, they answer messages, they react to tasks, and by the end of the day they feel drained with nothing left for themselves. This cycle slowly convinces them that personal growth is something to squeeze in only when everything else is done. But a person who thinks this way never truly grows, because work will always expand to fill every available hour. The path to real change begins when someone reverses the order and puts their personal habits before the noise of daily responsibilities. Choosing habits over workload does not mean ignoring responsibilities. It simply means building a life where self-growth becomes the foundation and work settles around it instead of the other way around. A person's daily habits shape their character, their discipline, their clarity, and ultimately their future. Work might pay the bills, but habits determine who they become. When someone wakes up and immediately commits time to their physical health, their learning, their reflections, or their inner discipline, they send a message to themselves that who they are matters more than the tasks waiting on their desk. This shift creates a powerful sense of control that strengthens them throughout the day. Every day offers a chance to begin with one small action that strengthens the mind or sharpens the body. Even 10 minutes of reading, journaling, stretching, or practicing a skill can set the tone for the entire morning. When these habits are completed before any work begins, something inside becomes stronger. There is a quiet confidence that comes from completing personal commitments before fulfilling obligations. It reminds a person that they are not simply a worker, they are a human being with goals, abilities, and potential that deserve attention. There will always be temptations to skip habits. Work will always feel urgent. Deadlines, messages, requests, pressure, these things never disappear. But when someone allows the urgent to push aside the important, they slowly lose control of their direction. A life driven entirely by workload is a life that reacts instead of leads. A life built on habits goes the opposite way. It leads, it guides, it grows. Stoic thinkers always believed that the only thing a person can truly control is their own mind and actions. Daily habits give someone mastery over both. Every time they choose a habit first, they strengthen their discipline. Every time they choose a task first, they strengthen their tendencies toward urgency and reaction. The truth is that most people do not grow because they believe they need more time. They wait for the perfect moment, or a free weekend, or a break from responsibilities. But growth never arrives from extra time. Growth comes from disciplined time. Even 10 minutes of consistent, intentional practice beats an entire day of wishful thoughts. When someone prioritizes habits over workload, they learn that time is not found, it is created. Self-growth becomes part of the schedule, not an afterthought. There is a calm strength in starting the day with activities that feed the mind, body, and spirit. When someone reads before checking emails, they begin their day with ideas instead of demands. When they meditate before scrolling, they start with clarity instead of chaos. When they stretch or exercise before sitting down to work, they bring energy instead of fatigue. These small actions create ripple effects throughout the entire day. They help a person handle stress more easily. They help them think more clearly. They help them stay patient, focused, and grounded when problems arise. Choosing habits over workload also builds identity. Every person becomes what they repeatedly do. If someone repeats stress, deadlines, and pressure, their identity becomes tied to their job. They start saying things like, "I don't have time for myself," or "Work is too busy right now." Slowly, they convince themselves that their growth isn't possible. But if someone repeats discipline, health, learning, and self-respect, they begin seeing themselves as someone who invests in their own development. That identity is powerful. People who believe they can grow actually grow. People who believe they are stuck remain stuck. There is a quiet strength that develops when someone starts honoring their own habits. They begin trusting themselves. They stop making excuses. They stop waiting for perfect moments. They stop relying on motivation and instead rely on discipline. Discipline is not loud or dramatic. It is steady, simple, and often unglamorous. It shows up in the small choices, the decision to read instead of rush, to breathe instead of react, to practice instead of procrastinate. Over time, the results are life-changing. Real-world success often comes from these tiny daily actions. The worker who improves their mind daily eventually becomes more capable. The person who invests in health daily builds endurance for the long journey. The one who practices a skill daily becomes someone who can pivot, expand, or reach new opportunities. Personal growth does not directly compete with work. It enhances it. The more someone grows, the more valuable they become in any environment. But this value is built through consistency, not intensity. There will be days when habits feel harder than usual, days when energy is low or when stress is high. On these days, the mind will try to convince the person to skip growth and jump straight into the workload. But these are the days when habits matter the most. Anyone can be disciplined when life is easy. Real growth happens when someone sticks to their habits even when life is messy. Completing a personal habit in the middle of chaos teaches resilience, a trait that helps not just at work but in every part of life. A simple way to prioritize habits is to create a small morning routine that belongs entirely to personal growth. This routine does not need to be long, it only needs to be consistent. Even a short sequence like breathing for a minute, reading one page, and drinking water with intention can anchor the mind. Over time, these small habits create a strong foundation that work cannot shake. A person who centers themselves before facing the world becomes harder to overwhelm. Another practical step is protecting evenings from unnecessary exhaustion. When work ends, it should end. Boundaries allow someone to protect energy for personal activities like learning, practicing, or reflecting. Even 20 minutes spent intentionally can create progress that compounds over months. The idea is not to become rigid or extreme. The idea is to give growth a place in daily life that work cannot steal. Replacing passive habits with intentional ones is also essential. Many people say they don't have time for personal growth, but they spend hours on autopilot activities, scrolling, binge-watching, random browsing, and reacting to notifications. Take away mental space that could be used for habits that elevate a person. When someone chooses a short practice over mindless consumption, they reclaim control of their life. Even small improvements in how they use their attention can change everything. Progress should be tracked, not for perfection but for awareness. When someone sees their habits stacking day after day, they feel motivated to continue. When they notice gaps, they can adjust. Tracking is not about pressure, it is about clarity. What gets measured grows. What gets ignored fades. A person who chooses daily habits over workload learns that personal growth is not a luxury, but a responsibility. Each day becomes a chance to shape themselves before the world tries to shape them. They move through life with a stronger sense of direction. They work with more focus, live with more purpose, and think with more stability. Habits become anchors, guiding them through stress and uncertainty. In the long run, the benefits of prioritizing habits go far beyond productivity. They influence emotional well-being, confidence, health, relationships, and opportunities. Growth is never wasted. Every small habit is an investment in a better version of oneself. Work may come and go, roles may change, and circumstances may shift, but the person someone becomes through daily practice stays with them forever. The message is simple yet deeply powerful. Choose daily habits over workload, because work shapes your day, but habits shape your life. When a person makes this choice consistently, they stop surviving and start becoming. They step into each morning with purpose. They carry themselves with inner strength. They build a life that grows instead of drains. And one day, they look back and realize that the small decisions they made each morning quietly built the future they once only hoped for. Number 2. Protect learning time every day. Protecting learning time every day is one of the strongest commitments a person can make to their own growth. It is the decision to carve out a part of the day that belongs entirely to personal progress, no matter how busy life becomes. Many people want to improve, but they leave their learning to chance. They tell themselves they will study when they find the time, yet days slip by with no real development. Work, chores, noise, and distractions fill the hours, and the desire to learn is pushed aside. Growth stops not because they lack ability, but because they lack protected time. Real change begins when learning becomes a non-negotiable part of the day, something guarded with intention and discipline. Learning is not something that happens by accident. It requires space, attention, and consistency. When someone sets aside a dedicated time each day for learning, they reclaim control over the direction of their life. That time becomes a promise to themselves, a small sanctuary of progress in the middle of daily demands. Even a short period of learning can shift how a person thinks and how they respond to the world. Over weeks and months, those short sessions accumulate into deep understanding, new skills, and better opportunities. Knowledge becomes a quiet force that shapes decisions, strengthens confidence, and expands possibilities. Every person has the same number of hours, yet what they become depends on how intentionally they use those hours. Protecting learning time means giving importance to long-term growth rather than short-term tasks. Work will always ask for more, responsibilities will always grow. If someone waits for the perfect free moment to learn, they will wait forever. The difference between those who rise and those who remain the same is not intelligence, it is consistency. A person who learns daily builds momentum. A person who skips learning becomes stuck in the same patterns year after year. Daily learning can take many forms. It can be reading a few pages, listening to a chapter of an audiobook, practicing a skill, solving a problem, studying a new topic, or reflecting on insights gained. What matters is not the method, but the commitment. Protecting this time means shutting out everything else during that period. Messages, notifications, noise, tasks, and pressures. It becomes a moment where the mind focuses entirely on growth. This level of focus is rare in a world full of distractions, and that is exactly why it is so powerful. There is a sense of renewal that comes from learning something new each day. It opens the mind, introduces fresh ideas, and breaks the monotony of routine. When a person learns daily, they feel more alive because their mind is expanding instead of shrinking under repetitive tasks. Learning pushes the boundaries of what someone believes is possible. It helps them understand themselves and the world with more clarity. It gives them tools to navigate challenges and to make smarter decisions. Over time, it transforms the way they think and act. To truly protect learning time, someone must set clear boundaries. This might mean starting the morning with learning before any other demand steps in. It might mean blocking out a quiet moment during lunch. It might mean turning off the phone in the evening so the mind can focus without interruption. Discipline is required because distractions are always waiting. Social media, messages, and entertainment can easily steal learning time if boundaries are not firm. Protecting learning time is an act of respect toward one's future self. It is a way of saying, my growth matters and I will honor it. Life does not get easier when someone decides to learn daily. There will be days when motivation is low, energy is limited, and time feels tight. But those are the days when learning matters the most. A consistent learner trains their mind to show up regardless of mood or convenience. They learn even when the day is exhausting. They show up even when the schedule is chaotic. This discipline builds a mindset of resilience. The habit of learning becomes stronger than any excuse. There is also a special kind of courage in setting aside time for learning. It means choosing long-term gain over short-term comfort. It means investing in oneself instead of being consumed by daily pressures. Many people fear change because learning challenges their old beliefs. But a person who protects learning time embraces growth even when it feels comfortable. They are willing to stretch beyond what they know. They are willing to be a beginner. They are willing to expand their mind without needing immediate results. Learning every day helps a person stay sharp in an ever-changing world. Technology evolves, industries shift, and new opportunities emerge constantly. Those who dedicate time to learning remain adaptable. They do not fear change because they have trained their mind to grow with it. They move with confidence because they understand more than they did yesterday. This daily improvement gives them an advantage that compounds quietly over time. While others repeat the same habits for years, the consistent learner becomes someone who can reinvent themselves again and again. Real learning is not about collecting information. It is about transformation. It is about taking in knowledge and applying it to life. When someone sets aside daily time for learning, they begin noticing how their new knowledge influences their decisions. Their conversations become deeper, their problem-solving skills improve, their creativity expands. The world starts looking different because their mind sees more possibilities. This transformation does not happen in a single moment. It happens through the steady accumulation of insight, one day at a time. Protecting learning time also teaches patience. Growth rarely shows immediate results. A person may study a subject for weeks before seeing any improvement. But this slow and steady process builds a strong foundation. Just like physical training strengthens the body little by little, mental training strengthens the mind through repeated, intentional effort. Daily learning becomes a quiet discipline that shapes character. It builds humility because learning reminds us how much we still do not know. It builds confidence because each new lesson proves that we can grow. When someone protects their learning time long enough, it becomes part of who they are. It is no longer something they force themselves to do. It becomes a natural part of their identity. They begin seeing themselves as a lifelong learner, someone committed to personal development, someone who values knowledge, someone who grows continuously. This identity influences every corner of life. It affects the quality of work, the depth of relationships, the clarity of decisions, and the direction of ambitions. A strong learning habit can also create a sense of peace. While daily responsibilities pull a person in different directions, learning brings them back to themselves. It reminds them of what they want to become. It grounds them in purpose. Even when days feel overwhelming, learning provides a quiet anchor, a moment where the mind can breathe, reflect, and expand. This mental space strengthens emotional stability. It helps a person handle stress more calmly and see challenges with a clearer perspective. Over time, the time invested in learning builds something priceless: self-trust. When someone shows up every day for their own growth, they prove to themselves that they are reliable. They learn that they can count on their own discipline, their own dedication, and their own commitment. This trust becomes the foundation for greater goals and stronger decisions. Protecting learning time every day is not just a habit. It is a declaration that growth matters more than comfort, more than distraction, and more than excuses. It is the daily act of shaping the mind, strengthening the character, and expanding the future. When someone honors this commitment, they become a different person, more capable, more aware, more grounded, and more powerful. And one day, without even realizing when it happened, they look back and see that those protected minutes each day created a lifetime of growth. Number 3. Set growth goals before deadlines. Setting growth goals before deadlines is a shift in mindset that allows a person to build a life driven by intention rather than pressure. Many people wake up each day thinking about the tasks they must finish, the messages they need to respond to, and the deadlines they must meet. Their entire day revolves around meeting expectations set by others. In this pattern, personal growth is treated as something optional, secondary, or something to fit in only when everything else has been completed. But a life built on deadlines alone eventually feels empty because it is shaped by demands instead of personal purpose. When someone sets growth goals before focusing on deadlines, they decide who they want to become first, and they let their responsibilities fall into place afterward. This shift brings direction, clarity, and power to their daily life. Growth goals are not about adding pressure. They are about defining a path. They help a person understand what they are working toward beyond the routine tasks of the day. When someone commits to growth goals, they choose the direction of their character, their skills, their mindset, and their capabilities. Deadlines simply tell them what the world expects from them. Growth goals tell them what they expect from themselves. This difference changes everything. Instead of being pulled by each new demand, they begin guiding themselves with purpose. A person who sets growth goals begins each day with clarity. They know the areas they want to develop, perhaps communication, emotional strength, physical health, discipline, creativity, or consistency. These goals anchor their decisions. They become a filter that shows which tasks matter and which tasks simply consume energy. Without growth goals, everything feels urgent. With growth goals, only the meaningful things stand out. This helps a person direct their time toward actions that shape their future instead of actions that merely fill the day. Deadlines often trigger stress, rush, and reactive thinking. Growth goals trigger focus, intention, and resilience. When growth goals come first, deadlines lose their power to overwhelm. A person knows why they are doing what they are doing. They understand that tasks are completed not just to avoid consequences, but to support something larger, something tied to who they want to be. This creates a quiet confidence. Instead of feeling like they are constantly chasing tasks, they move with a sense of steadiness. Setting growth goals also helps someone avoid becoming stuck in repetitive cycles. Many people work years in the same environment without improving the skills that would help them advance or shift into better opportunities. They complete deadlines week after week but make no real progress in themselves. Growth goals interrupt this pattern. They push a person to stretch, to learn, to challenge their old habits, and to move beyond their comfort zones. Deadlines keep someone in place. Growth goals move them forward. One of the strongest benefits of setting growth goals before deadlines is that it strengthens self-respect. A person who defines their own goals shows that they value their development. They send a message to themselves that their future deserves planning. They are not living passively. They are choosing their direction. This builds an inner foundation that makes them more capable of handling both personal and professional challenges. They begin trusting their ability to lead their own life rather than waiting for external instructions. Growth goals should be specific and meaningful. They should focus on developing qualities or abilities that elevate a person's life, not just today, but months and years from now. A growth goal might be improving confidence in communication, strengthening patience in stressful moments, learning a new skill that expands career opportunities, or developing a habit that brings long-term improvement. These goals become stepping stones that guide a person out of stagnation. They ensure that each day holds forward movement, no matter how small. Placing growth goals ahead of deadlines teaches someone how to allocate their energy wisely. Deadlines demand completion, growth goals demand evolution. A person who commits to growth understands that their energy is their greatest resource. They choose to invest it in areas that offer lasting benefit. This prevents burnout because they are no longer pouring all their strength into tasks that will be forgotten within a week. They are building something internal and permanent. A practical way to apply this principle is to begin each day with a brief moment of reflection. What actions today will support my growth? This question shifts the mind from survival mode to progress mode. It brings attention to small steps that create long-term change. Even if a day is packed with responsibilities, the presence of growth goals ensures that personal development still receives attention. Whether someone works on a skill for 10 minutes or spends time improving their mindset, the goal remains alive. Setting growth goals before deadlines also helps someone handle unexpected chaos. When a day becomes overwhelming, deadlines can cause panic, but growth goals provide grounding. They remind a person that one chaotic day does not define their direction. The long-term focus keeps them centered even when tasks pile up. The person knows that as long as they take at least one step that aligns with their growth, the day still holds value. This approach also transforms the way someone views their job. Instead of seeing work as an endless stream of tasks, they begin seeing it as a tool, a place where they can apply and reinforce their growth. For example, if someone is working on improving patience or communication, their workplace becomes a training ground. Deadlines might still exist, but they no longer feel like the center of life. They simply become opportunities to practice becoming a stronger person. Growth goals also bring meaning to accomplishments. Completing a deadline by itself feels temporary. Completing it while staying aligned with personal growth creates fulfillment. This combination strengthens the connection between who a person is and what they do. It prevents the feeling of emptiness that comes from achieving tasks that hold no deeper value. When growth goals guide behavior, even small achievements feel purposeful. People who set growth goals before deadlines often experience less stress. They are not constantly reacting, they are planning, directing, and positioning themselves. Their actions become more intentional, their decisions become clearer. Their days feel more aligned with who they want to be. As a result, they experience greater emotional stability. They are not pulled into the chaos of every new demand. They remain grounded. Another benefit is improved decision-making. When someone knows their growth goals, they can quickly determine whether a new task supports or distracts from their development. This prevents overcommitment and reduces wasted time. It also allows a person to say no more confidently. They are not rejecting tasks out of laziness, but out of clarity. They know the path they have chosen for themselves, and they protect it with discipline. Setting growth goals before deadlines strengthens identity. The person begins seeing themselves as someone who actively shapes their future. They are not just an employee or a worker fulfilling tasks. They are a growing individual with a vision for their life. This mindset increases self-belief, which is essential for long-term success. When someone knows what they want to become, the challenges they face no longer discourage them. They see obstacles as part of the process, not as signs of failure. Over time, this practice creates a powerful transformation. The person becomes more capable, more focused, and more confident. They gain a sense of direction that many people never develop because they stay trapped in a cycle of deadlines. Growth goals ensure that life expands instead of shrinks. They help a person rise higher than their circumstances. They provide a structure that supports long-term progress. Placing growth goals before deadlines is ultimately a declaration that becoming a stronger, wiser, and more capable version of oneself is the highest priority. This decision shapes the path of a person's life. It creates momentum that moves them beyond routine tasks and into a future shaped by intention. When someone consistently follows this principle, they build a life that grows with purpose instead of pressure. And eventually, they realize that the goals they set for their own development became the foundation for every achievement that followed. Number 4. Limit overtime to protect development. Limiting overtime to protect development begins with understanding that a person's energy is their most valuable resource. When energy is constantly drained by extended hours of work, there is little left for the actions that actually shape a stronger, wiser, more capable life. Many people fall into the habit of working beyond their scheduled time because they believe it proves commitment or prevents problems. They convince themselves that staying late will secure their job or keep everything running smoothly. But over time, this pattern leads to exhaustion, frustration, and a slow decline in personal growth. The more someone gives to endless work, the less they have for building themselves. Protecting development means creating boundaries that prevent work from taking more than it deserves. The idea is not to avoid responsibility, but to recognize that a balanced life requires space for improvement. A person who works non-stop eventually becomes less effective, less creative, and less enthusiastic. Their mind dulls, their patience decreases, and their motivation weakens. Development needs time, but it also needs mental clarity and emotional stability. A day filled with overtime drains both. The hours that could be used to learn something new, practice an important skill, strengthen the body, or reflect on personal direction, get swallowed by tasks that usually lose their importance as soon as they are completed. Without boundaries, work expands until it consumes everything. Limiting overtime is an act of discipline. It means finishing work at the right time, even when there are more tasks waiting. It means accepting that not every problem must be solved today. It means trusting that stepping away allows the mind to recharge and return stronger the next day. Some people fear that reducing overtime will make them appear less committed. But in truth, those who protect their development often outperform those who burn themselves out. A clear mind produces better results than a tired one. A healthy person works more efficiently than an exhausted one. And a person growing every day becomes more valuable in the long run. Protecting development requires a shift in priorities. When someone understands that personal growth holds more long-term impact than finishing a few extra tasks, They begin seeing overtime differently. They realize that constant overworking is not a sign of dedication. It is often a sign of poor boundaries, unclear planning, or pressure they have accepted without questioning. In contrast, limiting overtime shows self-respect. It shows awareness of one's limits. It shows responsibility toward one's future, not just one's present requirements. There is strength in leaving work at the time you planned and trusting yourself to handle the rest later. This strength grows even more when the extra time is used intentionally for development. The hours gained from limiting overtime can be invested in learning, reading, reflecting, exercising, or planning long-term goals. These actions create internal progress that lasts far longer than the temporary accomplishment of clearing a few extra tasks. Development compounds. Over months and years, the difference becomes enormous. While others remain stuck in cycles of overwork, the person who protects their development becomes more skilled, calmer, more balanced, and more prepared for new opportunities. Many people stay late at work simply because they cannot detach. Their mind stays wrapped around tasks, deadlines, expectations, and pressure. When they go home, they continue thinking about work. This makes overtime a mental habit, not just a physical one. Limiting overtime also requires learning how to mentally disconnect. This can start with small practices: closing the laptop fully, turning off notifications, clearing the work desk, or taking a short walk immediately after finishing. These actions signal the brain that the workday is complete. Once the mind detaches, it becomes easier to shift into activities that support personal development. Another challenge is the belief that there is no choice but to work overtime. In many cases, this belief is created by old habits or by taking on more than necessary. By planning tasks better, setting clearer boundaries with colleagues, and focusing on the most important work rather than trying to do everything, a person can reduce the need for extra hours. Efficiency grows with practice. Prioritization improves with intention. The more skilled someone becomes at managing their workday, the less overtime they require. This skill alone is a form of development, and it gets stronger each time overtime is limited. Protecting development also requires learning to say no when necessary. Some overtime happens because people agree to tasks that could be postponed, delegated, or refused. Saying no is not selfish, it is disciplined. It prevents unnecessary stress and keeps energy available for growth. Boundaries create space for progress. Without them, work expands endlessly. A person who learns to set limits gains control over their life rather than letting work control it. Choosing to limit overtime creates a healthier relationship with work. Instead of seeing it as something that must dominate every hour, someone begins to see it as a meaningful part of life, not the entire focus of it. Work becomes something to manage, not something to surrender to. This balanced approach enhances both productivity and well-being. A person who maintains this balance approaches challenges with a clearer mind, makes fewer mistakes, and recovers faster from stress. They show up to work with energy instead of exhaustion. When overtime is reduced, personal development can finally take its rightful place. Time opens up to learn new skills that elevate future opportunities. Time opens up to build habits that strengthen discipline. Time opens up to reflect on goals that shape long-term direction. Without these actions, a person may work hard but remain the same. Development is what pushes life forward. Work may bring income, but growth brings transformation. Limiting overtime also helps someone reconnect with the parts of life that often get ignored: health, relationships, creativity, and rest. These paths support emotional strength, which is crucial for personal growth. A mind weighed down by constant work cannot think clearly enough to improve. A tired body cannot support daily learning. A stressed heart cannot reflect deeply. By protecting time from overtime, someone protects their inner resources. They give themselves the space needed to grow steadily and sustainably. The real challenge is consistency. Limiting overtime once or twice is easy. Making it a routine requires discipline. It means resisting the urge to stay late even when others do. It means trusting that growth deserves time just as much as work does. Over time, this discipline becomes natural. The person stops associating their value with how long they work and begins valuing themselves for who they are becoming. This mental shift is powerful. It frees the person from seeking validation through exhaustion and guides them toward true progress. Small daily steps create change. Ending work at the scheduled time becomes a habit. Protecting the gained hours for development becomes another. Each day strengthens the pattern. Each week builds momentum. Each month results in visible progress. Over time, a person who limits overtime becomes significantly stronger in skill, mindset and awareness than someone who constantly drains themselves for immediate tasks. There will always be situations that demand flexibility, but these moments become the exception, not the rule. The key is to ensure that overtime never becomes a daily pattern. When development is protected, the person becomes more capable of handling these occasional demands without breaking down. They have more resilience, more clarity, and more confidence because their life is not built on constant depletion. In the long run, limiting overtime is a choice that supports a life of growth instead of a life of exhaustion. It allows a person to rise steadily instead of collapsing under pressure. It brings balance, strength, and purpose to each day. And most importantly, it ensures that the person's development continues regardless of how demanding their job might be. When someone chooses to protect their development, they choose a life shaped by progress rather than by pressure. This decision becomes the foundation of a future built on strength, clarity, and self-mastery. Number 5. Track progress instead of tasks. Tracking progress instead of tasks shifts the entire way a person experiences growth. Many people move through their days, checking boxes, completing assignments, and clearing lists, yet they still feel stuck because they focus only on what has been done rather than who they are becoming. When attention stays on tasks, the mind stays busy but not always productive. When attention moves to progress, the mind becomes intentional and every action carries meaning. This shift frees a person from the pressure of endless activity and guides them towards steady improvement that can be measured, felt, and built on. It teaches the value of acknowledging development rather than counting chores, and it helps a person understand whether they are moving in the direction they truly want or simply running on a treadmill they never chose. Progress is not about perfection or speed. It's about direction, consistency, and awareness. It demands stepping back from the noise of daily responsibilities and evaluating what is actually changing. Tasks can be completed without thought, but growth requires reflection. When a person takes even a few minutes to review how their skills, mindset, and habits are evolving, they gain clarity about what deserves more attention and what no longer serves them. This habit prevents drifting and brings structure to personal growth. It also builds confidence because noticing improvement reinforces the belief that change is possible. Many people fall into the trap of believing that being busy equals being effective. They carry long lists, stay up late finishing work, and rush through routines without questioning whether these actions lead them to a better version of themselves. Tracking progress disrupts that pattern. It forces a person to examine whether their effort is aligned with their goals or simply filling time. A completed task tells you what you did. Measured progress tells you who you're becoming. When someone adopts this mindset, their days feel more purposeful and their decisions become more deliberate. A practical way to begin is to identify what matters most in your growth. Instead of listing 10 tasks that all feel urgent, choose 1 or 2 areas that genuinely influence your future. It might be improving your communication, building discipline, increasing your knowledge, strengthening your health, or developing financial stability. Once clarity is established, progress becomes easier to measure. You can look at how your skills have changed over the past week, how your mindset has shifted, or how your habits have improved. This approach transforms your focus from temporary achievements to long-term development. Another helpful step is to create a simple system for tracking improvement. It does not have to be complex or time-consuming. A small notebook, a digital app, or a single sheet of paper is enough. At the end of each day, write down one thing that moved you forward. It could be learning something new, staying committed to a habit, finishing a meaningful practice, or handling a situation with more patience or awareness. Over time, these small entries form a clear record of who you are becoming. They show patterns, highlight strengths, and reveal areas that need attention. They also protect you from the feeling that your effort is invisible, because your progress becomes visible every time you look back. When a person only tracks tasks, they often judge themselves harshly. A day without completed boxes feels like failure, even if something internally shifted. But when a person tracks progress, they learn to notice the subtle changes that matter more than productivity, growing in self-control, becoming more focused, staying calm in difficulty, or choosing a better response are not tasks, but they are powerful signs of development. These changes rarely show up on a traditional to-do list, yet they determine who you will be in the future. Tracking them builds self-respect and reduces the pressure to constantly perform. Another advantage of focusing on progress is that it enhances motivation. Seeing how far you've come fuels the desire to continue. It turns growth into a continuous journey rather than a series of disconnected activities. Even on difficult days, knowing that progress is measured by overall direction, not perfect execution, keeps you grounded. It helps you maintain commitment when circumstances are challenging. When you understand that every effort contributes to your evolution, you stop expecting instant results and start valuing steady, consistent movement. This shift also helps you prioritize more effectively. When progress becomes the priority, you naturally stop giving energy to tasks that drain you without contributing to your goals. You begin to question whether certain responsibilities are actually necessary or simply habits built from pressure or expectation. This clarity helps you remove distractions and invest more time in meaningful practices like reading, learning, reflecting, and building new skills. Over time, your days become more structured around growth rather than obligation. Tracking progress encourages a healthier relationship with work. Instead of viewing your job as the primary measure of your worth, you begin to see it as one part of a larger life. You might still dedicate yourself to your responsibilities, but you no longer allow them to overshadow your development. You become more aware of how your job fits into your long-term goals and how your personal growth can improve your performance. This mindset prevents burnout and strengthens resilience, because your identity does not depend on productivity alone. To make this practice sustainable, begin each week with a short review. Look at what improved during the past 7 days. Identify what contributed to that improvement. Notice what slowed you down or pulled you off track. This weekly review creates accountability, not in a harsh way, but in a supportive and honest way. It helps you see patterns in your behavior and understand what needs adjustment. It also gives you the chance to celebrate progress that might otherwise be forgotten. Another effective strategy is to break your long-term goals into small, measurable steps. When progress is broken down into manageable pieces, it becomes easier to track. Small wins accumulate into major changes. For example, if your goal is to improve communication, progress might look like having one meaningful conversation per week or practicing clarity in one situation each day. If your goal is to enhance discipline, progress might look like completing a single habit consistently or avoiding one distraction that usually controls your time. Tracking these small moments keeps you encouraged and reminds you that growth is always happening, even when it feels slow. It's also important to be honest about setbacks. Tracking progress is not about pretending that everything is improving every day. It's about acknowledging the truth so that you can adjust wisely. When you see that a habit is slipping or that your focus is scattered, use that information as guidance rather than criticism. Progress is rarely a straight line, and growth often comes from understanding where you slipped and choosing a better path the next day. This honesty prevents discouragement because you stop expecting perfection and start valuing persistence. As progress becomes central to your growth, you begin to develop a stronger sense of identity. You become someone who pays attention to their evolution, someone who values internal change more than external approval. This creates stability and calm. You no longer feel controlled by pressure or overwhelmed by responsibilities because you know what matters most. You know that every step forward, no matter how small, contributes to the person you are becoming. This awareness gives you the strength to stay disciplined even when motivation fades. In time, tracking progress builds a foundation of self-trust. You stop doubting whether you are moving forward because you have evidence of your growth. You stop comparing yourself to others because your focus is on your own development. You stop chasing validation because your progress speaks for you. This self-trust becomes one of the most powerful tools in your journey. It allows you to push yourself without fear, take on challenges with confidence, and maintain direction when life becomes chaotic. Ultimately, choosing to track progress instead of tasks transforms your relationship with growth. It shifts your attention from completing activities to evolving as a person. It teaches you to value consistency over busyness, awareness over pressure, and direction over speed. When this mindset becomes part of your daily life, your growth accelerates naturally. You begin to shape your future with intention, clarity, and steady commitment. You no longer rely on external achievements to feel accomplished because your internal development becomes your greatest success. Number 6. Use weekends for personal mastery. Weekends offer a rare kind of freedom that often goes unnoticed. They arrive after days filled with responsibilities, deadlines, and constant movement, giving you a brief window to reclaim your attention. Many people use this time to escape, distract themselves, or simply recover from the week. Yet those same 2 days can become the foundation for long-term personal mastery when approached with intention. Shifting how you use weekends can change the entire direction of your life because they provide uninterrupted space to work on yourself without the pressure of work demands. This time becomes a shield that protects your growth, a space you control fully, and a chance to build the skills and mindset that shape your future. Using weekends for personal mastery starts with understanding that growth requires dedicated energy. During the week, your hours belong to many things: work, obligations, unexpected problems, and daily routines. But weekends can belong to you if you choose them to. This choice does not mean loading your Saturday with unrealistic expectations or turning Sunday into another workday. It means creating a rhythm that brings you closer to the person you want to be. When you decide that weekend time is meant for development, your entire perspective shifts. You stop waiting for the perfect moment to start improving yourself because you intentionally design that moment every week. The best way to begin is by identifying what mastery means to you. It might be mastering your emotions, a personal skill, your mindset, your health, your finances, or something creative you've always wanted to develop. Mastery doesn't happen instantly. It happens through repeated focused effort that compounds over time. When you know what you want to build, weekends become an opportunity to practice deeper. You engage with the work that strengthens you instead of drifting through 2 days without direction. This clarity protects you from wasting the time that could be used to upgrade your life. Another important shift comes from reducing unnecessary noise. Weekends often get filled with errands, distractions, or spontaneous obligations that drain the very hours you could use for personal growth. When you treat your weekend development time as non-negotiable, you start protecting it with more discipline. You say no to plans that throw you off track, limit activities that bring no value, and create boundaries that preserve your energy. This doesn't mean avoiding relaxation or enjoyment. It means removing the mindless habits that bury your potential. When you use this time with intention, even small steps can create noticeable progress. A powerful strategy is to choose one major focus for each weekend. Instead of scattering your energy across too many activities, commit yourself to one meaningful area. It could be reading an important book, practicing a skill, studying something you've been avoiding, organizing your life, or planning your next steps. Concentrated effort is more transformative than scattered activity. When you give your full attention to one area, you gain insight and mastery much faster. This builds a sense of momentum that stays with you throughout the week. Another effective practice is building a weekend routine. It doesn't have to be rigid or complicated. A simple structure helps you move with intention rather than drifting from moment to moment. For example, you might begin your Saturday with a quiet hour of learning or reflection before the noise of the day begins. You could use part of Sunday to review your progress and prepare for the week ahead. When you do this consistently, weekends become an anchor that keeps your growth steady, no matter how unpredictable the weekdays become. This routine brings order to your life and gives you a sense of control that daily busyness often takes away. Personal mastery also requires a certain level of discomfort. Weekends are often used for comfort, but comfort rarely leads to transformation. Growth requires doing things that challenge your assumptions, push your limits, or demand more discipline. Choosing to use weekends this way sets you apart because most people prefer to stay in familiar routines. You don't have to adopt harsh discipline or remove all enjoyment. You only need to choose something that strengthens you instead of something that weakens you. When you make this choice repeatedly, it becomes a natural part of your identity. There is also tremendous value in reflection during weekends. Throughout the week, your mind stays busy responding to situations, handling tasks, and following routines. By the weekend, many thoughts remain unprocessed. Reflection allows you to understand your behaviors, your reactions, and your choices. It helps you see where you grew, where you slipped, and where you need more discipline. This awareness becomes a guide that helps you improve without confusion. Even a simple reflection practice, writing down your thoughts, reviewing your actions, or thinking through important decisions, can create major insight. Many people stay stuck because they never pause long enough to understand themselves. Weekends fix that problem. Another principle of mastering weekends is using them to strengthen your body and mind. Physical health influences mental clarity, emotional control, and long-term resilience. When the body is weak, discipline becomes harder. Using part of the weekend to train, stretch, walk, or move with intention builds the foundation for better focus and stronger habits. Similarly, nourishing your mind through reading, learning, or deep thinking brings stability that daily tasks cannot provide. Mastery is built from these simple actions repeated consistently. It's also important to remove guilt from this process. Many people feel guilty spending weekend time on themselves. They feel pressured to socialize, handle errands, or entertain others. But personal mastery requires self-respect. When you choose to invest in your development, you are not being selfish. You are being responsible. You are choosing long-term stability over temporary distraction. You are choosing to build a life that supports your values. Guilt fades when you recognize that your growth benefits every part of your life, including your work, your relationships, and your future. Another valuable weekend practice is experimentation. During the week, experimentation feels risky because there is little room for mistakes. Weekends give you space to try new routines, explore new interests, test new habits, and make adjustments without pressure. You can practice skills without fear of failure, explore new ideas, and discover talents you didn't know you had. Over time, these small experiments create breakthroughs. They reveal what excites you, what challenges you, and what drives you forward. This curiosity is a core part of personal mastery because it keeps your growth alive. Weekends can also serve as a reset for your environment. A cluttered space leads to a cluttered mind. When your surroundings are disorganized, your thinking becomes scattered. Using weekend time to clean, organize, or simplify your environment creates mental clarity. It removes unnecessary stress and makes your weekdays smoother. This small act strengthens discipline because it teaches you that order supports growth. A clean environment helps you think clearly, and clarity makes it easier to commit to your goals. Another powerful use of weekends is planning. When you plan your week with intention, you protect your energy and ensure that your actions align with your goals. Planning prevents overwhelm because you already know where your focus belongs. It also reduces stress because you don't have to scramble to handle everything at once. Even a short planning session can create structure that makes your weekdays more productive and less chaotic. When planning becomes a weekend habit, your entire life becomes more organized and purposeful. Personal mastery during weekends is also supported by rest, but not passive rest that leaves you feeling empty. Rest that replenishes you, like deep sleep, meaningful conversations, time in nature, or quiet moments, strengthens your emotional stability. When the mind and body recover, discipline becomes easier. Rest is not the opposite of productivity. It is a key part of it. When you choose rest intentionally, you create the balance needed for long-term growth. In time, using weekends for personal mastery becomes a powerful form of self-respect. You stop seeing weekends as a break from life and start seeing them as reinforcement for life. You stop drifting through time and start shaping it. You stop responding to your circumstances and start directing them. This shift gives you control over your growth, your habits, and your future. When weekends become time for mastery, your identity begins to change. You see yourself as someone who values growth, someone who invests in their potential, someone who uses their time intentionally. This identity strengthens every part of your life. Your confidence increases, your discipline grows, your choices become clearer, and slowly, weekend by weekend, you build a stronger, wiser, and more capable version of yourself, one that will carry you through challenges, guide your decisions, and shape the life you're working toward. Number 7. Say no to unnecessary work. Saying no to unnecessary work is one of the most powerful steps in protecting your personal growth, yet it is also one of the hardest skills to develop. Many people feel pressured to accept every request, take on every assignment, and meet every expectation placed upon them. They fear disappointing others, losing respect, or appearing unhelpful. But in trying to please everyone, they drain their energy, scatter their focus, and weaken their ability to grow. Personal development requires space, clarity, and commitment, And none of these can survive if your time is controlled by tasks that bring no meaningful value to your life. Learning to say no becomes a form of self-preservation, a way of defending the hours that shape your future. The difficulty often begins with the belief that more work equals more worth. This belief pushes people to accept responsibilities that stretch them thin or distract them from their priorities. But unnecessary work is not simply extra work. It is work that does not contribute to your goals, your growth, or your long-term stability. When you take on tasks that do not align with your purpose, you trade your valuable time for temporary approval. You lose the opportunity to invest that time in yourself. A day filled with tasks that do not matter easily turns into months without real progress. Saying no is not an act of rebellion, it is an act of wisdom that protects your path. To say no effectively, you must first become clear about what truly matters. When you know your priorities, refusing distractions becomes easier because your direction is already defined. You understand what deserves your attention and what does not. Without this clarity, everything feels urgent and every request appears equally important. But when you take time to identify your goals and your values, you begin to see how certain responsibilities lead you forward while others simply consume your energy. This understanding strengthens your ability to decline tasks confidently because you are no longer guided by guilt or pressure, but by intention. Another key part of saying no is understanding your limits. Many individuals overcommit because they underestimate the amount of time and energy tasks require. They assume they can handle everything and end up overwhelmed. Recognizing your limits is not a weakness, it is an honest acknowledgement of your capacity. When you protect your limits, you prevent burnout and build a healthier relationship with your work. You gain the ability to perform at a higher level because your energy is not scattered across too many responsibilities. You also develop stronger discipline because you choose your commitments deliberately instead of acting out of impulse. Saying no also requires practice. At first, it may feel uncomfortable because it challenges deeply rooted habits. You may feel the urge to justify your refusal or apologize for protecting your time. But declining unnecessary work becomes easier when you practice simple, clear communication. You do not need elaborate explanations. A straightforward response that respects both your boundaries and the other person's request is enough. Over time, this approach becomes natural. People around you begin to understand your priorities, and many may even respect you more for maintaining them. One of the strongest benefits of saying no is the ability to regain control of your schedule. When you stop accepting every request, your days become more predictable and more aligned with your goals. You can create time blocks for learning, personal development, rest, and meaningful work. You reduce stress because your commitments are intentional, not forced. You also begin to see how much time you were losing to tasks that didn't support your growth. This awareness can be shocking, but it also becomes a turning point. You start valuing your time differently, treating it as a resource that must be guarded, not given away freely. Another advantage is the growth of self-respect. When you protect your time, you send a message to yourself that your goals matter. You stop acting as if everyone else's priorities are more important than your own. This shift strengthens your confidence because you no longer rely on the approval of others to feel stable. You become grounded in your choices, operating from purpose rather than pressure. This inner stability allows you to move through life with more clarity and more discipline. It also reduces resentment because you no longer feel drained by obligations you never wanted. Saying no also helps you recognize the difference between high-value work and noise. High-value work contributes to your progress, enhances your skills, or leads to meaningful results. Noise, on the other hand, fills your schedule without bringing any lasting benefit. When you say no to unnecessary work, you create more room for the tasks that elevate your life. This selective focus accelerates your growth because your effort is concentrated rather than scattered. Over time, you begin to notice the quality of your work improving, and this strengthens your sense of mastery. This practice also brings emotional clarity. When you constantly take on unnecessary work, your mind becomes cluttered with stress and frustration. You struggle to stay focused because your attention is divided. But when you clear away the tasks that do not matter, your mind gains more space to think, learn, and reflect. This mental space is essential for personal growth. It allows you to process experiences, make intentional decisions, and understand your direction. Emotional stability becomes easier because your life is not dominated by obligations you never chose. Another important aspect is recognizing the patterns that lead you to say yes automatically. It may be a desire to avoid conflict, a fear of disappointing others, or a habit of undervaluing your time. Understanding these patterns helps you break them. When you recognize why you say yes too often, you can begin to challenge those reasons. You realize that your growth requires courage, and courage often appears in the form of a simple refusal. Over time, this strengthens your emotional resilience. You stop acting out of fear and start acting out of purpose. Learning to say no also enhances your relationships. While it may seem like declining requests will damage connections, the opposite is often true. When you communicate your boundaries clearly, others begin to understand you better. They no longer expect unlimited access to your time. They learn to respect your commitments and see you as someone who values their own path. Healthy relationships are built on mutual understanding, not on sacrificing your well-being to keep others satisfied. When you set boundaries, you create a foundation of honesty and respect. Another powerful result of saying no is that it helps you preserve energy for opportunities that truly align with your goals. When your schedule is overloaded with unnecessary work, there is no room for growth-focused activities. But when you decline what doesn't matter, you remain available for what does. You can accept opportunities that elevate you, develop your skills, or support your future. This selective approach creates momentum in your life because you are choosing commitments that shape your identity and support your long-term vision. Over time, saying no becomes a habit that transforms your life. You begin to approach decisions with more awareness. You weigh requests based on their impact, not on emotional pressure. You choose actions that strengthen you rather than drain you. This shift brings a sense of calm because you are no longer pulled in every direction. You move through your days with intention, discipline, and clarity. You build the life you want instead of reacting to the demands around you. Ultimately, saying no to unnecessary work is an act of self-mastery. It teaches you to value your time, protect your energy, and honor your growth. It allows you to invest in the habits, skills, and goals that shape your future. It frees you from the illusion that productivity equals worth and guides you toward a path built on purpose. This simple but powerful decision helps you move with discipline, choose with clarity, and grow with intention. Each refusal becomes a step toward a stronger, wiser, and more focused version of yourself, one who understands that protecting your time is essential to fulfilling your potential. Number 8. Invest earnings into self-improvement. Using your earnings for self-improvement is one of the most transformative decisions you can make because it shifts your relationship with money from simple survival to long-term expansion. Many people work hard, earn money, and then use it only to maintain their current lifestyle. They cover bills, handle responsibilities, and buy things that offer short bursts of comfort. But when income is used only to stay afloat, the future remains unchanged. The path stays the same, the skills stay the same, and the growth stays limited. Investing your earnings into your own development changes this pattern completely. It turns money into a tool that builds new abilities, strengthens your mindset, and opens opportunities that wouldn't exist otherwise. It becomes fuel for the person you are becoming, not just the person you are now. This shift begins with recognizing that personal growth is an asset, something that increases in value over time. Everything you learn, every mindset shift you experience, and every skill you acquire stays with you far longer than any object you buy. A course that teaches you something new, a book that deepens your understanding, or a mentor who challenges your thinking can shape your future in ways you cannot measure immediately. Many people hesitate to invest in themselves because they expect instant results. But real self-improvement works like compound interest. The benefits accumulate slowly and then rise sharply. A skill learned today might create an opportunity years later. A shift in perspective might save you from future mistakes. Money used on personal development rarely provides quick rewards, but it always provides lasting returns. One of the first steps in this journey is redefining what investment means. Most people think of investment only in financial terms, stocks, savings, or business ventures. But self-investment is the foundation that supports all other types of growth. Without knowledge, discipline, or confidence, financial investments can fail because the person making the decisions is unprepared. But when you invest in yourself, you improve your ability to make wise choices. You develop the judgment required for stability and progress. You become capable of creating opportunities instead of waiting for them. Treating self-investment with the same seriousness as financial investment elevates your entire life. Another important part of this process is examining how you currently use your earnings. Many people spend money automatically, without questioning whether their purchases contribute to their growth or simply satisfy temporary impulses. When you look closely at your spending habits, you may find that a portion of your income goes to things that add nothing to your long-term development. These expenses often feel harmless, but over time they accumulate into a significant amount that could have been used to build a stronger future. Being aware of this pattern gives you the power to redirect your money towards something meaningful. Even small adjustments can create a surprising impact when done consistently. Investing in self-improvement does not always require large amounts of money. What matters most is consistency. A single book can shift your thinking. A short workshop can teach you a valuable skill. A small coaching session can reveal insights that change your direction. The size of the investment matters less than the intention behind it. When your goal is growth, every step contributes. The important part is choosing to spend money in a way that strengthens you instead of weakening your potential. Over time, these small investments create a foundation that supports your bigger ambitions. Another area worth investing in is mentorship. Guidance from someone who has achieved what you want accelerates your progress significantly. Many people try to figure everything out on their own, believing that asking for help is a sign of weakness. But mentorship is not weakness, it is efficiency. Learning from someone's experience saves you from mistakes that could take years to fix. It gives you clarity at moments when you might otherwise feel lost. It exposes you to perspectives you wouldn't see on your own. Using your earnings to learn from those ahead of you is one of the most powerful ways to grow because it allows you to build on their foundation rather than starting from zero. Another valuable investment is improving your environment. This does not mean spending money on luxury or unnecessary decoration. It means creating a space that supports your discipline and mindset. Investing in simple tools, organizing your workspace, or upgrading an item that helps you learn more effectively can improve your ability to stay focused. When your environment supports your goals, your habits become easier. You feel more stable, more motivated, and more prepared to grow. Small improvements to your surroundings can create a meaningful psychological shift, helping you stay committed even when motivation fluctuates. Your health is another area where investment becomes essential. A body that is exhausted, poorly nourished, or neglected cannot sustain long-term growth. Many people overlook this, treating health as an afterthought. But without physical strength, mental clarity weakens, emotional regulation becomes harder, and discipline declines. Using your earnings to strengthen your health through nutritious food, exercise tools, or wellness practices supports your mind and your long-term stability. When your body is strong, your growth becomes easier. You think better, act with more intention, and approach challenges with greater resilience. Another important form of self-investment is education. This does not have to be formal school. It includes any structured learning that deepens your understanding or expands your skills. Courses, books, seminars, or online programs are all forms of education that shape your future. When you invest in learning, you give yourself access to perspectives that challenge your assumptions and strengthen your thinking. Knowledge becomes a shield that protects you from confusion and a tool that helps you navigate new opportunities. Education is one of the few investments that no one can take away from you. Once you acquire it, it stays. Investing in self-improvement also requires emotional courage, because it often means choosing long-term benefit over short-term comfort. It may mean saying no to purchases that bring quick pleasure so you can direct that money towards something meaningful. It may mean stepping out of familiar routines to try something new. It may mean facing uncomfortable truths about your weaknesses so you can improve them. This emotional discomfort is part of the process. Growth requires honest awareness, and self-investment forces you to confront the parts of your life that need strengthening. Over time, this courage becomes a habit. You learn to choose what helps you grow instead of what keeps you stagnant. Another powerful benefit of investing in yourself is that it changes your identity. When you consistently use your earnings to improve your skills and mindset, you begin to see yourself differently. You stop identifying as someone who merely works for survival and begin to see yourself as someone building something meaningful. This identity shift improves your discipline because you no longer act from pressure or insecurity. You act from purpose. You make decisions that support your growth because you see yourself as someone who invests in their own future. Identity has a powerful effect on behavior, and self-investment strengthens that identity every time you commit to it. As you continue this practice, you may notice your opportunities expanding. People who invest in themselves become more capable, more confident, and more valuable. They gain skills that make them stand out. They develop clarity that helps them make better decisions. They build networks that support their progress. They grow into individuals who attract better opportunities because their actions demonstrate commitment and ambition. This transformation does not happen overnight, but it becomes unavoidable when you continually pour resources into your own development. Eventually, investing your earnings into self-improvement becomes the natural way you use money. You stop viewing self-growth as an optional luxury and start seeing it as a necessity. You recognize that income spent on strengthening your abilities multiplies in value. You understand that the greatest asset you have is yourself. A stronger mind, clearer purpose, and sharper skills create a future that money alone cannot buy. This understanding guides your decisions, shapes your habits, and supports your long-term success. Over time, you realize that every dollar directed toward your growth contributes to a version of yourself that is wiser, more capable, and more prepared for anything life brings. Number 9. Replace scrolling with skill building. Replacing scrolling with skill building is one of the most transformative choices anyone can make because it turns passive consumption into active growth. Endless scrolling on social media, news feeds, or entertainment platforms can feel harmless at first, but over time it consumes hours that could otherwise be invested in personal development. Every moment spent mindlessly swiping is a moment where skills could be honed, knowledge could be gained, or habits could be strengthened. Skill building, in contrast, compounds over time, producing tangible progress, confidence, and new opportunities. The decision to replace scrolling with productive activity is not just about discipline, it is about reclaiming control over your time and directing it toward creating the future you want. The first step is awareness. Most people scroll automatically without even realizing how much time it consumes. A few minutes quickly turn into hours, leaving little room for meaningful development. Awareness involves observing your habits honestly and noticing patterns. What triggers the scroll? Is it boredom, avoidance, habit, or stress? By identifying the root cause, it becomes possible to redirect that energy. Awareness is the foundation of change because it allows you to choose consciously rather than drift passively through your days. Once aware, the next step is to replace scrolling with something of higher value. Skill building can take many forms depending on your goals. It might be learning a new language, improving communication, developing coding abilities, practicing writing, honing public speaking, or refining any craft that aligns with your vision. The key is to choose skills that create real leverage in your life. Unlike fleeting entertainment, these skills provide long-term rewards and continuously expand your opportunities. Each session dedicated to skill building moves you closer to mastery and increases your capacity to achieve meaningful goals. This shift also requires creating an environment conducive to focus. Notifications, alerts, and distractions make it far too easy to fall back into passive scrolling. By turning off distractions, organizing your space, and designating specific times for skill practice, you reduce friction and make the new habit more sustainable. Even simple changes, like keeping your phone in another room or using apps that limit access to social media, can dramatically increase your productivity. When your environment supports skill building, it becomes easier to commit and harder to revert to unproductive habits. Another critical element is consistency. Skill building is not a single event, it is a process that requires repeated effort. Unlike scrolling, which produces instant gratification but no real growth, developing a skill requires patience and regular practice. Setting aside small, focused blocks of time daily ensures that improvement is steady and cumulative. Even 30 minutes a day can produce noticeable results over months, far surpassing the benefit of countless hours spent on distractions. The key is to treat skill building as a non-negotiable commitment, just as you would a work responsibility or an important appointment. Measuring progress is another powerful motivator. Scrolling gives no feedback beyond temporary distraction, but skill building offers visible results. Tracking your improvement, whether through practice logs, project completion, or performance tests, reinforces the habit and encourages further effort. Progress provides evidence that your time investment is working, creating a positive feedback loop that strengthens commitment. As you see your abilities grow, motivation increases, and the habit of replacing passive consumption with active learning becomes ingrained. Skill building also nurtures discipline and patience. Endless scrolling rewards immediate gratification, creating a cycle of impulsive behavior. Skill building, by contrast, demands sustained focus, attention, and resilience. Developing expertise in any area requires concentration and deliberate practice. Every session challenges your ability to remain committed despite distractions or slow progress. This repeated training strengthens self-control, attention, and mental endurance, qualities that extend far beyond the skill itself and positively influence other areas of life. It is also essential to recognize the psychological benefits. Mindless scrolling often produces a feeling of emptiness or dissatisfaction. Comparing oneself to curated highlights of others' lives can lead to anxiety, frustration, or low self-esteem. Skill building replaces these negative patterns with empowerment and confidence. When you invest in yourself, you experience growth firsthand. You gain competence, mastery, and the satisfaction of tangible achievements. This creates a more resilient mindset and a sense of purpose that scrolling can never provide. Another important strategy is to pair skill building with accountability. Sharing goals with someone, joining a community, or documenting progress publicly can reinforce commitment and provide external motivation. Accountability creates a structure around your learning, making it harder to fall back into old habits. When someone else observes your progress or encourages your development, the habit strengthens. This external reinforcement complements internal motivation, creating a system that supports consistent growth. Reframing your perception of time is also vital. Each moment is a choice, and choosing skill building over scrolling is a statement about your priorities. Time spent on growth multiplies in value because it compounds over weeks, months, and years. Scrolling may feel like relaxation, but it rarely produces anything enduring. Skill building, on the other hand, generates tangible assets, knowledge, abilities, and capabilities that cannot be taken away. Recognizing this long-term impact changes how you approach daily decisions, helping you prioritize what truly matters. The shift also requires patience with yourself. Breaking the habit of scrolling is not instantaneous. Old patterns are deeply ingrained and will resist change. It is normal to experience moments of temptation or regression. The important part is to return to the practice consistently. Each time you consciously choose skill building over distraction, you strengthen your self-control and reinforce your commitment. Over time, the new habit becomes automatic, and the pull of scrolling diminishes naturally. Skill building also connects to opportunity creation. Every skill acquired increases your ability to take on challenges, solve problems, and create value. Unlike passive entertainment, these skills have real-world applications that expand your options. You become capable of tasks that were previously inaccessible. You gain confidence to approach new situations and authority in areas where you once felt uncertain. This active growth not only improves your life directly, but also positions you to influence and lead in meaningful ways. It is equally important to enjoy the process. Skill building should not feel like a chore or punishment. Choosing areas of genuine interest increases engagement and enhances retention. When you enjoy the challenge, learning becomes a source of energy rather than a drain. Motivation builds naturally, and the habit becomes self-sustaining. The pleasure of seeing yourself improve, of overcoming obstacles, and of achieving milestones far outweighs the temporary dopamine rush from scrolling. Finally, replacing scrolling with skill building is a transformative mindset. It is a deliberate choice to value growth over distraction, mastery over momentary satisfaction, and creation over consumption. Each session invested in a skill compounds into greater knowledge, ability, and resilience. Over months and years, this decision creates a version of yourself that is more capable, more confident, and more in control of life. It turns time into an ally rather than an enemy, and it transforms the way you experience each day. By consistently choosing skill building over mindless scrolling, you cultivate a life of progress, purpose, and long-term fulfillment. Number 10. Schedule growth before job duties. Scheduling growth before job duties is a transformative approach that flips the usual order of priorities and changes the trajectory of your life. Most people allow work to dominate their time, letting tasks, emails, meetings, and urgent demands set the tone of their day. By the time they finish, energy is depleted, focus is scattered, and personal growth takes a back seat. This pattern traps people in a reactive cycle where life happens to them rather than because of them. Prioritizing growth first interrupts this cycle. It positions development as the foundation upon which everything else rests. By intentionally starting with growth, you build strength, clarity, and resilience that enhance every other area of your life. The first step in this process is recognizing the value of your mornings. The early hours are unique because your mind is freshest, your willpower is highest, and external distractions are minimal. Many of the most successful people use this period to focus on personal development. By dedicating this time to learning, planning, or practicing skills, you invest in yourself before responding to external demands. Scheduling growth first does not require elaborate routines. It simply requires consistent commitment. Even a short period, when used with intention, compounds over weeks and months to create remarkable results. Starting with growth shifts your mindset for the entire day. When personal development is tackled first, the mind approaches work with clarity, energy, and focus. Challenges that arise feel more manageable because your confidence and competence have been reinforced before external pressures begin. Growth-first mornings prime your brain to think strategically, make better decisions, and handle stress with calmness. By putting your development before job responsibilities, you create a mental buffer that protects your long-term vision and reduces the risk of being consumed by urgent but non-essential tasks. A practical way to implement this is by identifying the areas of growth that matter most. It might include learning new skills, exercising discipline, building emotional resilience, reading, journaling, or planning personal goals. Once these areas are defined, create a daily schedule that ensures they receive attention before work begins. Treat this time as non-negotiable, as if it were a critical meeting. The commitment is crucial because growth is easy to postpone when job duties appear urgent. Consistency is more important than length. Even 30 minutes each morning focused on personal development will yield far greater results than sporadic efforts. Another key element is preparation. Growth-first mornings are easier to maintain when the night before is used intentionally. Preparing materials, planning tasks, or creating a quiet space in advance eliminates excuses and makes the habit automatic. The less friction you have, the more likely you are to follow through. Consistency builds momentum, and momentum fuels motivation. Over time, the practice becomes self-reinforcing. The act of scheduling growth before work eventually turns into a mindset, a belief that your development deserves precedence over reactive demands. Energy management also plays a crucial role. Many people start their day responding to emails, checking notifications, or jumping into meetings, which consumes mental energy and diminishes focus. By reserving the first hours for personal growth, you harness your peak energy for meaningful work rather than allowing it to be drained by routine obligations. This approach ensures that your most important work, developing yourself, receives priority. The benefits extend into your job as well because you perform better when mentally sharp, emotionally balanced, and aligned with your goals. Another advantage is clarity of purpose. When growth is scheduled first, every subsequent action is informed by your long-term vision. Decisions at work, interactions with colleagues, and choices about projects are filtered through a lens of personal development. You act with intention rather than reacting impulsively. This clarity reduces wasted effort and increases the impact of your actions. It also reinforces a sense of control over your life, which is essential for cultivating discipline and resilience. Scheduling growth before job duties encourages accountability. Knowing that your morning is dedicated to development creates responsibility toward yourself. You begin to respect your own time and treat your personal goals with the same seriousness you would a professional obligation. This self-respect strengthens discipline and creates a cycle of empowerment. Each day you honor your growth. You reinforce the belief that your personal evolution is essential and non-negotiable. This practice also reduces procrastination. When personal development is scheduled first, it eliminates the temptation to postpone it indefinitely. Many people tell themselves they will grow later after work, only to find that energy and focus are exhausted. By committing to growth before other duties, you overcome the common obstacle of delay. The habit ensures that the most meaningful activities are prioritized and prevents them from being crowded out by the urgency of daily tasks. Another critical aspect is the cumulative effect. Growth first mornings compound over time. Each day you invest in yourself strengthens habits, builds skills, and expands understanding. Unlike reactive work, which can be repetitive or transactional, personal development produces lasting improvements. The progress is measurable in knowledge gained, skills sharpened, and mental resilience built. Over months and years, this consistent focus on growth produces outcomes far beyond what occasional effort could achieve. Scheduling growth first also fosters creativity. The mind is often at its most imaginative in the quiet morning hours, free from distractions and pressures. Using this time for brainstorming, problem-solving, or learning encourages innovation that benefits both personal and professional life. Many people overlook the creative potential of uninterrupted time, yet this is when ideas can flourish and breakthroughs occur. By protecting this period, you maximize the opportunities to think strategically and generate meaningful solutions. Another benefit is emotional stability. Starting the day with development builds confidence and a sense of accomplishment that buffers against stress and setbacks. When challenges appear at work, you face them from a position of strength rather than exhaustion. Growth-first mornings cultivate patience, emotional regulation, and resilience. These qualities not only improve performance, but also enhance relationships, decision-making, and overall life satisfaction. The process also encourages reflection. Time spent on personal growth allows you to review your goals, evaluate your progress, and adjust strategies. Reflection creates self-awareness, which is critical for long-term improvement. It helps you understand which habits are serving you, which need adjustment, and how daily actions align with larger objectives. Without reflection, growth can be haphazard and reactive. Scheduling dedicated time ensures that evaluation and adjustment become consistent habits, guiding continual progress. Implementing this practice requires discipline, but the results justify the effort. Begin with clear intentions, consistent timing, and a plan for what your growth period entails. Protect it from interruptions. Treat it as sacred, because it is the time that shapes your future. Every day spent prioritizing development over reactive work accumulates into a stronger, more capable, and more confident version of yourself. Ultimately, scheduling growth before job duties is an act of ownership over your life. It transforms time from a series of obligations into a tool for building your future. It strengthens discipline, sharpens focus, and enhances resilience. By committing to personal growth first, you ensure that every day contributes to the person you are becoming rather than simply maintaining the person you were. Over time, this practice creates momentum, mastery, and a life defined by intentional growth rather than passive reaction. Each morning becomes an opportunity to invest in yourself, establishing a trajectory toward long-term success, fulfillment, and self-mastery.